All right, well, this is going to be action packed. So I'll go ahead and start with introductions. Hello, for those of you that have not met me yet, I am Jessica Paxton, the product marketing manager at Smith.ai. And Smith.ai is a 24/7 customer engagement solution. Our North American based virtual receptionists handle calls, chats, Facebook messages, and even text messages on behalf of businesses. Today's webinar is another one in our Masters series. So if this is your first time seeing a Masters series webinar, we invite guests who are experts in their field for informative webinars to help business owners grow and to help their businesses grow. So today with me, I have Andrew Bull, who is author of Monsters of Team Performance and a team performance expert. So Andrew loves elevating the happiness, motivation, and productivity of teams, and he specializes in helping smaller teams as, like I said, team performance expert. So today we're going to talk about monsters in your business. You might have monsters in your business and not know it. And if you're here, that's perfect. Those monsters kill motivation, they kill productivity, and they kill the well-being of your business. Plus, they stop you from hitting the beach. Now, in this 60-minute training, you're going to learn how to defeat team performance monsters and why now is the time for you to focus on improving your teams. And with that, take it away, Andrew.
Well, what a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Jessica. That's absolutely smashing. So yeah, I'm really pleased to be here today to join you all. I'm going to share my screen today. This is going to be a very fast-paced training, as long as I don't get the bit wrong where I actually have to share the screen. Let's hope I get that right. Can everyone see what I'm sharing? I hope so. Can you see it, Jessica?
That's me.
Yeah, it's you. Yeah, so it's Jessica. So yeah, we know who Jessica is. So I'm going to press on with the training now. As we're going, if you've got questions, please put them in the chat. Jessica will tell me about them and I'll answer them. So we know Jessica from Smith.ai, and I'm glad that, and I appreciate the opportunity. So I'm Andrew Bull, and I wrote this book called Monsters of Team Performance, which you can find on Amazon now. In today's training, we're going to teach you why some teams win more than others. Okay, there's some actual facts behind this. You're going to meet 3 monsters from my book. You're going to get some action steps, and there'll be some time for question and answers as well. All right, let's fade in. I've got a bit of a filmmaking storytelling background, so I like to keep things visual and interesting and engaging, and I hope you'll appreciate that. So we all like to think that our enterprises, our businesses are these nice, clean, sterile environments. I mean, that's the fantasy, isn't it? It's like when you buy your kitchen, it's always clean and sterile. And the same about our businesses. We like to think that way. But actually, on board our enterprises are these monsters that are stowed away. Yikes. I know. What drama. Now, the thing is, every business have these monsters on board, and it's kind of only natural and organic that this happens. But the worst thing about having those monsters on board is when you try and hide away from them, when you put those fingers up and you try to pretend that they're not there when they're causing damage inside your business. Now, when we think about the damage caused by team performance monsters, we need to think about how they're not only dragging down team performance, but also harming the business itself, and also killing the personal life and well-being of leaders and executives like yourself, and also team members as well. So let's think about how team performance is dragged down. Well, we can see it when we have unmotivated employees, when there's poor attitude, maybe there's tension in the office, there's a bit of arguing, people are pointing fingers, some anxiety, maybe there's a lot of sick days, because sometimes when people aren't enjoying being at work, then they're just trying to find ways of not being at work as much as possible. So we can have all those negative indicators of poor performance and all of those results of poor performance as well. But having these monsters on board also harms the business, because when you've got monsters inside your team and business, it's going to be harder to retain and attract the talent that you need. It's going to mean projects are slower and more sticky to complete. And it's also going to mean expensive mistakes are repeated. The next thing that's damaged by having team performance monsters in your business is your personal life and well-being. Now, you might be familiar with this scenario. You're out enjoying time with your friends and family. Maybe you're over the park playing frisbee with one of your kids, and then all of a sudden your phone rings because there's a problem at work. And instead of being out enjoying yourself and enjoying your quality of life, you're zapped out of your personal life and you're zapped back into the black hole of your business. And that's happening all because your team is underperforming. And so you're stuck inside the business, stuck working when you could be out in the sunshine having fun. So if this is happening to you, your team aren't performing like they should, then you're going to have to work more and stress more. You're also going to have less time and freedom because you're going to find yourself dragged back or stuck at work more often, because rather than being able to leave your team members just to get on and run with projects and deal with hiccups and problems, you're going to have to keep firefighting and keep going back into it. And you're also not going to be working on the kind of projects you enjoy as well, because I'm convinced that work isn't just something that we do to earn money and buy houses and so on. It's something that we do to enjoy as well. And there's the work that we want to do and the work we want to enjoy. And there's some work that's just kind of thrust upon us, which really isn't as enjoyable. And that kind of work tends to come about when the team performance monsters invade. All right, so let's recap the personal costs of underperforming teams. So you're going to have more stress, more fatigue, more friction, more money worries, because if your team can't perform at a high enough level because they're too busy arguing or pointing fingers or stressed or taking sick days, then you're going to get less projects finished, which means you're going to bill less ultimately. And you're going to end up getting sucked back into the business as well and have your spare time and freedom consumed by the business. Now, not all teams are the same. Some teams actually win more than others. You know, some teams get to have fun. Maybe they do cartwheels. Maybe that's not all teams, but they get to have fun and just enjoy the day, and they're still successful and they still manage to win and hit targets, and they subsequently earn more money. In fact, winning companies earn 1.8 times more than other companies, right? And I know that seems crazy, but it's true, because there's some data that backs up this story of winners and losers. So I went ahead and looked at some data from the UK, from the Houses of Parliament, which is our government in the UK. I looked at the library they had on companies here, and that data actually shows how the biggest companies, which tend to earn the most per employee, earn 1.8 times more per employee than smaller companies. Now, however, even though it's typically these very huge companies that earn more per employee, this isn't across the board. Some smaller companies also earn that amount per employee as well. It is possible for all companies to earn that kind of money per employee. So now we've got a question for you. Jessica, do you want to put the question to everyone?
Sure thing. I have launched the poll, and that is, how much revenue do you generate per employee?
So the options are, do you generate 50 to 100K per employee, 100 to 200K per employee, 200 plus, or maybe you just prefer not to share? Just if you can vote now, just got another moment or so.
Okay. Wow. You guys are all voting. Thank you. Thank you for your participation.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's lovely to get you guys involved. Thank you.
So let me go ahead and end this and I'll share it. So we've got about 50-50 here.
Okay, that's cool. That makes sense. Well, thanks for everyone voting. Yeah, so some people don't want to share, and some people are down the lower end. But it is true. I'm happy if people reach out to me afterwards. I'm happy to point you in the direction of the survey I've got, because it's really interesting to see that opportunity that is there for companies to earn more who want to. So, why do some teams win more? Is it because of sales? They've got great sales executives. They've got great sales cadence. Is it that? Is it because they have a great product? You know, they really stand out in the marketplace for their product. Well, I think all of those things are important, but all of those things stand on one thing, and that's a solid platform of team performance. Without that solid platform of team performance, you can have the best product in the world, but your team won't be delivering it like they should. And you can have the best sales cadence in the world, but if your team don't have the right attitude and they don't work in a cohesive way where they're helping each other out, then you're not going to close as many deals. And what happens when the monsters invade, right? When the team performance monsters turn up, they're going to unsettle that platform of team performance, and all those things that you've been working on that you consider to be the most important, like getting deals over the line, are all going to start falling down and not happen like they should. So in the rest of this training, I'm going to help you get some steps towards the high performance team that both you and your business deserve. And as we're going, if you've got questions, please do put them in the chat, because Jessica will put them to me. I'm happy to answer them. So this is the steps we're going to go on now that will help you defeat the monsters. Step 1, we're going to help you accept the existence of monsters. Step 2, you're going to meet 3 of the monsters from my book. And step 3, it's labeled as 4. Oh, well. Step 3, you're going to learn how to defeat the monsters. So step 1, accept the monsters are inside your business, right? You need to accept the monsters are inside. Because if you can't accept that monsters are inside your business, you're not going to be able to take the steps that you need to take to overcome them, level up your team performance, level up your business, and level up your life. You really need to accept that they're there so you can take the proactive and constructive steps that you need to take. So this brings us to our next question.
Yeah, the next poll is, are you ready to accept the existence of team performance monsters inside your business? Yes, you've got monsters. No, your enterprise is perfect. No one here is on Star Trek. Well, even Star Trek wasn't perfect. And then also something else. So if you do select something else, go ahead and put a comment in the chat. We would love to hear it. Ooh, yeah, I love this. Yeah, everyone here is, let's go ahead and share this. Everyone here accepts that they have monsters and they are ready to make those changes. That's exactly what we wanted to see.
That's fantastic. Love it. Love it. That's really good. So we've all completed step 1. High five, everyone. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's carry on. All right. So step 2, we're going to meet 3 monsters that affect teams like yours. So the first monster we're going to meet is called the Blame Blob. So this monster, I think all of us at one time or another have going to have been familiar with. Jessica, have you been familiar with this monster?
Unfortunately, yes, I have. I have met this monster.
Okay, so this monster inspires finger pointing, lack of cohesion, and a climate of fear. And if you're wondering who did these drawings, they're all mine. And Yeah, there's more in my book if you like crazy drawings. And so there's some signs that the blame blob is inside your business, right? So you're going to see the finger pointing, you did this, you did that, this kind of stuff. You're also going to see some harmful gossiping where people are like, that Andrew, he can't be trusted on that kind of project because he keeps on getting it wrong. This kind of thing. We're going to see shirking of responsibility with people like backing away from stuff and saying, well, that's nothing to do with me. Oh, I don't do that. That's Graham. Well, that's Sandra. She takes care of that stuff. And we'll see that lack of cohesion. Rather than people working as like a cohesive unit, they're going to be working separately from each other, right? So your knife and fork won't be together. They're going to be all the way over there, different parts of your house. That's what happens. Right. So I want to share a quick story about this. So my background, I spent many years in the film industry, as well as marketing and so on. But anyway, back in the film industry, I did this car commercial for this Scandinavian company. We went all the way out to Malta to film this car commercial because they've got an infinity tank there, which is this big tank of water. And it's great because you can shoot a car in it and or a boat, and it looks like you're filming out to sea because the infinity tank has no visible line. So very cool. Unfortunately, we went there to shoot a night shoot, and we did it during summer solstice, which I think is kind of crazy. What do you think, Jessica? Is that kind of a crazy strategic planning move?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was quite a lot. Anyway, I wrote a 2-page report before we went and did this project, and I told them, I was like, we need this much time, and it was more time than they'd scheduled. And then partway through the shoot, when it was overrunning and they hadn't taken any attention, paid any attention to this report, they came up to me and they were like, it's all your fault for writing that report, which kind of didn't make a lot of sense. But that's beside the point, really. What happened though was, rather than at the end of the project, them going away and them meeting with us and talking about it and learning how they can do projects better in the future, everything was just focused on the blame and finger pointing and who was responsible, rather than what we can all do better next time, which is the key, really, what we can all do better next time. So when we think about the damage caused by blame blob, there's going to be things like having a climate of fear present in your business. People thinking, will a finger be pointed at me? So that's not a very healthy atmosphere to have in a business, because people are going to be worried the whole time. And when people are worried the whole time, the finger's going to be pointed at them. They won't step into what they perceive to be the firing line, because why would you? There'll be mistrust among team members because they're always worried, who's going to point at me now and who's going to point at me here. So they'll worry about who they can trust in the office and who they can confide in. And because of this, your business will be exposed to more risk. And the reason it'll be exposed to more risk is because people will be hiding stuff more. Maybe someone makes a small mistake. It's not a huge one, but it's the kind of mistake that could really snowball and become a much bigger one. And rather than tell everyone about it and share that information and help everyone grow and move forward, they hide it because they're worried the finger of blame will be pointed at them. The flip side of that is people will take less risks and be less willing to innovate and try things, because they'll think, hey, if I put myself out there and I try something new, again, I'm putting myself in the firing line. If it doesn't work out, if this innovation doesn't pay off, I'm going to look bad and people are going to think negatively of me. So again, another bad thing. And this overall problem with the blame blob is going to create this really negative, closed atmosphere where people aren't open, where people aren't collaborating with each other. So yeah, not great. So the next monster we're going to introduce you to is the Guzzle Ghoul. So this monster will bring about the kind of environment and the kind of atmosphere where people are unengaged, lacking motivation, and feeling powerless and feeling like they've got no control over their destiny. Okay, this kind of monster drains motivation out of people. I'm just reaching into the camera now, like the Guzzle Ghoul. Anyway, so there's some signs that the Guzzle Ghoul is inside your business. You'll be able to spot demotivated team members, people who are just like hanging back a bit and who aren't rushing forward to do stuff in the business. You'll find that people aren't really engaged with what's going on. They're not really going to be engaged with the top level goals of the business. They'll just be kind of reactive and not proactive, waiting for you to tell them what to do. They probably won't persist with things either. They'll take something on, maybe start a task, and then they'll meet the first roadblock that comes up. And rather than, you know, keep on pushing through those roadblocks, they'll stop. And they'll also feel quite disconnected from the business as well. They'll just be the kind of people who will just turn up, do the hours, and then go home. They won't be part of the bigger vision or feel like they're a big part of the business and its overall journey. So I actually helped an IT company who are really suffering from this situation with their team members. The CEO was actually having to carry a huge amount of the projects in the business, all because the team members weren't sufficiently motivated and engaged with the business. And this meant the CEO couldn't have the time away to pursue their hobbies and do the things that they want to do, like learn new languages and travel and so on. They were just stuck inside the business. And so this is a real thing and a real monster, but it's something that can be beaten as well. So some of the damage caused by a Guzzle Ghoul, well, it's going to be slower and harder to complete projects, because if people aren't engaged, they're not motivated, they're not persistent, it's just naturally going to be harder to do it. You're also going to see team members resist changes because they feel like it's easier just to stay as they are, right? If they're not motivated, you've got to be motivated to change and to take on new projects, new software, new tools, new ways of doing things. If you're not motivated, you're going to resist those things. So it can be much harder for a company to change direction, do new things. And because people aren't proactive, they're not looking at what they can do, how they can help, it's going to mean that organization is going to waste resources on firefighting. It's also going to mean underdeveloped talent is wasted or going to be leaving the business, because the reality is 9 times out of 10, when someone comes into a business and ends up being unmotivated, it's not because throughout the whole of their life, they'll always be unmotivated. Often it's the environment or the situation they're in that actually demotivates them. And so you can employ the most talented people in your business, but if the environment isn't right, you're going to end up demotivating those people, and eventually you'll probably either fire them or they'll leave by their own volition. The next monster is the Hangry Snargler. So this encourages people to have a relentless appetite for work, to take on more than they can handle, and to try to do it all. The kind of monster that really tries to gorge itself on work. So there's some signs that the Hangry Snargler is inside your business. You'll see that some team members have insatiable appetites, and you'll see that projects are bottlenecking or at risk. And you'll see that some team members are stressed, tired, and burnt out because they're just doing too much. And others will be suffering from the flip side of the situation. They'll be suffering from boredom and lack of engagement because they don't have enough to do. So I've witnessed through the conversation with one of my friends recently, who's a senior marketing executive in a big agency, and the whole of his agency are being overworked by the business. They're all burning out because the CEO or the really high up people just keep on dumping more and more work on them. And even though they're doing it and trying to get through it as fast and as quickly as possible and to the best level as they can, they're burning out. And the talented people inside the business are actually starting to leave the business. So I just need a quick drink of water. So damage caused by the Hangry Snargler. You can have the wrong person on the wrong project, right? If some people are so hungry for work within a business. They can be snatching up work that's actually not the right fit for them, or maybe they're not the person who would get through it the quickest or the best. I mean, it's good for people to step outside of their comfort zone and try things, but sometimes you do just need the right people doing the right project. You're also going to see a lack of focus from overworked individuals, because they're going to be looking from here to there to there to, looking all over the place on different things. Have you experienced this, Jessica, where people are like overworked, doing too many different things and can't focus?
I have, yes. Being the Hangry Snargler is actually one thing that I struggle with, because I am naturally a take it all on, do it all kind of person. So this one really resonates with me personally.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's
I can admit that I struggle with this monster quite a bit personally.
That's very honest of you to say that. So yeah, so it can cause a lack of focus, because if you're always having to jump from task to task, the reality is all our projects don't like smoothly go one after another like little carriages on a train line. They all come down the train line together, and they all want attention, and they all want to be done now. And so you're always having to jump from one to the next one to the next one. So your focus is all over the place. So it's not very efficient. It also means you're going to have a single point of failure in the business quite often, because if that person is just grabbing hold of everything, if everything is funneling towards them, then what happens when they're suddenly absent, or they go on holiday for a month, or they need to be off sick for a couple of weeks? Well, all of a sudden projects are going to start falling over, and all because work has just been funneled towards those one or two people. You also might see team members burning out, because that's just naturally what happens when people work too much. And the flip side, underutilized people who aren't doing enough are going to look elsewhere. People who feel like they're not challenged and using their potential will go elsewhere. Right. So we've met the monsters. Let's move to step 3, defeat the monsters.
The fun part. Yeah. Okay. So unfortunately, this is only a 1-hour session, so we won't have time to defeat all of the monsters. So if you could answer the poll, and that'll determine what monster we're going to talk about in more detail today. So which monster do you want to defeat today? The Blame Blob, Guzzle Ghoul, or Hangry Snargler? Oh, wow. They are all over the place. Okay, so we'll go ahead. Looks like we've got most of the answers. So we'll go ahead. And by a narrow margin, the Blame Blob.
Okay, wow. Okay, that's interesting. All right, Blame Blob just came out just in.
I think this is a good opportunity to mention Andrew's book. So if we didn't talk about the monster that you are most interested in today, there are a total of 8 monsters in your book, right? Is that right?
That's
right. We only talked about 3 today, but there's 8 in the book. All right, so let's defeat the Blame Blob. I'm excited.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, that's a lot easier for me. It's the next slide. Woo! Phew. Okay, so let's defeat the Blame Blob together. Okay, so remember, the Blame Blob's all about finger pointing, lack of cohesion, climate of fear. So what fuels the Blame Blob? I go into more of what fuels it in my book, but we're going to cover some key and important ideas right now. So the wrong kind of culture can fuel the Blame Blob, right? A culture where blame is a rational choice. And a limiting belief can also fuel it. And the limiting belief such as blame is easier than learning. And then a mistake of choosing to play the role of victim. And I'm going to go into those in a little bit more detail now. So let's think about this problem of blame being a rational choice. Okay, well, sometimes it's easier to blame others than when blame becomes a rational choice. And one of the times this actually happens is when an organization is promoting a competitive structure. So let's say, for example, you're going for a round of redundancies in a business. When people are scared that they're about to lose their job, then they might feel like it's actually better to point the fingers at those around them, because it will help them keep their job within the business. And the same might happen if you had an experienced person in the business who suddenly sees a new person, maybe a new graduate out of university who's just joined the business, and they see that new person as a threat. And then they think, oh, well, the only way I can diminish this threat, the rational way to diminish it, is by putting that person down and making them look terrible. So a fear of job cuts can be one of those things that will drive that rational choice, that blame is a rational choice, and a fear of juniors can also. We can also see things like intense competition fueling blame as well. So when when you think there's like a huge bonus ahead of you that you can get, you might think that, oh, the way that I can get my bonus and stand out, and be the top person in my position is by pointing fingers and bringing everyone else down me. And basically anything that rewards blame in the business, whether it's keeping your job or earning more money or standing out or getting more attention or more praise, anything like that, which makes blame a rational choice. All right, so how can we deal with this? How can we make blame less of how can we make blame an irrational choice in a business? Make it so people don't want to do it. Well, we can make clear to people, and we can do this by sitting down with our team, for example. So if you did have blame in your business, you could sit down with your team or do a presentation and explain to them that actually pointing fingers at people, this kind of toxic behaviors or gossiping about people, doesn't actually help your performance review. If we're talking about performance reviews, it's actually going to drag down your performance review and actually count against you when it comes to bonuses, raises, promotions, this kind of thing. We can also do our best to reduce competition and make things and make it so, for example, the whole team get a bonus when they hit a goal, rather than individuals in the team get a bonus. You could also lead by example as well. So we've all been in these situations where people are pointing fingers, and sometimes it's easy to get swept up in these things. And that's how human psychology works, right? We're all hugely influenced by the behavior of others. So this is where real leadership can shine through, because if a leader, when things go wrong, doesn't go, oh, who made this presentation? This PowerPoint is awful. If a leader doesn't do that, a leader goes, what can we all do to make this better? How can I support you in future? What more information could I have given you to make this a better PowerPoint presentation? When we start thinking like this and thinking in this constructive way, then we start creating the kind of culture and the kind of atmosphere where blame is defueled, right? Where you're not fanning the flames.
I also try to think about how can we change the process, because a lot of times it's not the person that's broken, it's the process that's broken. So how can we make the process better to prevent these errors in the future?
100%. Yeah, 100%. It's exactly that. It's not about looking at people and fault finding with people, because most of the time it's got nothing to do with the individuals, the process, as Jessica said. We can also look at dismantling a culture of normal versus abnormal, right? We can look at sometimes in a business, people will think there's a certain way to behave, right? Maybe people are used to, when you go to a meeting and there's 10 people present around a table, people are used to not saying anything because they join the business and no one else pipes up in a meeting and says anything. So they don't pipe up and say anything in a meeting. But then when maybe one new person, Sandra, joins the company and she's not aware of this, and so she pipes up and says, oh, by the way, I've noticed a problem with this project is upcoming. Now, what could happen is other people around her could give her very evil looks and try and encourage her to pipe down and not talk up and not make waves. Or what could happen is the leadership could help encourage those kind of behaviors and, try and stop the kind of attitude where people can't put their head up and say stuff and have learning conversations about things. So try and dismantle that culture of people fitting in and being normal versus people who dare to put their head above the parapet. So a limiting belief that you're going to come up against is that blame is easier than learning. And right now we're all so busy and also overwhelmed. I mean, I look at myself, too busy, have too much to do. My partner, she's got too much to do. Right? We've all got too much to do. Have you got too much to do, Jessica?
Yes.
That's just generally you've got all this technology, but we've still got too much to do. I don't know. Something's going on there. Anyway, so this is the kind of the state of affairs. Everyone's too busy. So when we're too busy, it's kind of easy to take shortcuts, right? We all know you don't have time to make dinner, so you go to McDonald's. Like we take these shortcuts. That's how it works. Unfortunately, blame can be a shortcut. All right. It's easier sometimes to blame others than it is to look at ourselves and go, well, actually, what could I have done better? So, sometimes it's easier to defend ourselves as well than learn. And partly this comes about because people fear social rejection. So I see this all the time. I even see this amongst business coaches, actually, sometimes in big groups of business coaches, people reacting to each other out of fear rather than out of openness and courage. And when they react out of fear because they're afraid of being rejected socially, then they point fingers at everyone else and they project their fear at everyone else. And they also avoid introspection. They avoid looking into themselves and going, actually, Andrew, I didn't handle that very well. I didn't stay calm. Rather than asking these questions of themselves, they go, oh no, actually, Jessica, it's you did this wrong. Rather than me going, oh, I could have learned, I could have done something better. So as I said, also because people are overwhelmed and too stressed, taking responsibility and learning means more work. So it's easier to hide behind blame. So this is another reason this belief is supported. So a way that we can overcome this is through learning and growth, right? This is how we can help people, and we can educate people about blame culture. You could hold a training session about blame culture. And I'm just going to briefly mention my book because yes, I am promoting it, but actually this book will give you tons of information for running a workshop like that for your team. Make it really easy for you. So you could just run a workshop for your team about blame culture and help them understand why it's not helping your business move forward. It's not helping them as individuals or as a team, and it's dragging you all down. Right. So just education can be so powerful because sometimes we're aware like, oh, why is all this stuff happening? I'm really uncomfortable. Why are all projects like this? Every time we go into a project, it seems so great. And then it ends up going so negatively. And then people can't really understand why, but you could give them that clarity in a workshop with your team.
Think about the session that we did today. The very first step is acceptance that you have monsters, and then educating you on what those monsters are. So do the exact same thing with your teams.
100%. You can also promote positive values of transparency and learning with your team. So often, people can end up being separated when there's blame present and closed off from each other and not sharing. And, that's when mistakes pile up and things things break down because people aren't being transparent with each other. So to promote openness and transparency amongst your team, make that a big value of your team, and learning also. So you make it a natural instinct of your team that when something goes wrong, rather than going into blame mode, they go into learning mode.
Right.
I
was going to say, even though you might think that as a manager, and you might be thinking, okay, this is a learning opportunity. When you're communicating with your team, you need to be specific and say that up front. Say, this is what happened. I think this is a great learning opportunity. Can we find out where the breakdown was and exactly how this happened and how we can fix it? Because if you don't say that intro and you go in guns blazing, then your team might not remember that you were there looking for transparency and learning. So don't forget to say that. I know we're all busy, but take the extra 30 seconds to actually say that small intro to remind your team where this is coming from and what the goal of that conversation is. The goal is not blame. The goal is learning.
That's so right. You nailed it, Jessica. Really, really great. Yeah, because it's difficult sometimes when you're talking about blame to avoid. You don't want to blame people for blaming. You get stuck in this vicious loop as well. So yeah, you really do need to frame the conversation the right way, as Jessica said.
It's especially hard. Like Smith.ai is a fully remote company. And because we're fully remote and a lot of what we do is over text, I have to spend that extra time framing conversations when I'm sending someone a message or posting in a Slack channel.
Yeah. You just taking that extra moment can take away a lot of negative problems later down the road. What you can also do is reduce people's workloads as well, because if people have that belief that blame is easier because they're overwhelmed, they don't have time, and they're constantly looking to shovel stuff off of their overwhelmed desk, then they're always going to have the rationale of thinking blame is easier. So reduce their workloads, and you'll start reducing the blame. And you can also develop principles for how your business handles mistakes and learning as well. And I think Jessica's given us some great pointers there for how we can start doing that. Another thing that happens is sometimes people make the mistake of playing the role of victim. So Kate might say, I'm late with my project because of Mary. All right. So Mary becomes the villain in this situation. And then only Jim can save me from this situation. Maybe that's the CEO or line manager or whoever. So people create these dynamics where they're a victim, where they can't be empowered and change their situation. And they kind of get into this groove. And I think we all know people who are like this. I reckon we've all know at least one person in our life who plays the victim rather than taking ownership and responsibility for the results in life. So all they do is blame others when things go wrong and subsequently disempower themselves. They make themselves a victim. And when I'm talking about a victim here, I'm not talking about like a victim of crime or anything like that. I'm just talking about a victim in this specific context. So the solution here is empowerment and ownership. You need to empower your team and give them more autonomy, right? So you need to give your team the keys to the car in your business rather than, when we're kids, we get driven around everywhere, right? And that's fine when you're a kid. But when you're older, you want to get in the front seat and choose where you drive to. And doing that will help to remove your people from victimhood and try and encourage them away from victimhood to being autonomous front seat drivers. And when they become autonomous front seat drivers, they'll be more engaged and taking more responsibility for what they do in the business. And by the way, autonomy doesn't mean acting by yourself or not thinking of others. That's a different thing, actually. So it also will encourage. You also need to encourage a culture of what can I do better, right? People constantly thinking about how can I participate and lift the participation of myself up and the team and the business, and also connect people with this idea that I determine my results. What I get from the business, what I achieve in the business is down to me. It's not thrust upon me. It's down to me what I get done every day and what I turn up to do. It's not determined by some persecutor or villain. All right, so I need to skip a few slides here. So hold fire. Where the enterprise is hitting turbo mode. Okay, bit of crazy slide skipping because it was a true choice earlier. It wasn't one of those mind reader things where they give you a fake choice. Okay, so well done. We've defeated. Congratulations. We've actually defeated one monster today. So well done, everyone. High 10 to you all for doing that. That's awesome. So thanks for sticking around for that. I've got one final thought to share with you before we wrap up today. So we're now in this post-COVID world, and I know COVID isn't gone, and you're probably all a bit bored of COVID and talking about it. Don't worry, I'm not really talking about COVID. I just see COVID, the emergence of COVID, as like a line in the sand. And it seems to me like since COVID has emerged, a lot of crazy things are going on, and they will keep going on. And so we're living in this time of hyper challenge. So right now we've had the hottest summer in the UK that we've ever had. The grass is yellow everywhere. There's extreme weather everywhere. There's lots of extreme stuff happening. And I don't think this is going away anytime soon. I don't think we're going to be going back to the same late 90s, early 2000s. So we're living in this time of hyper challenge, extreme weather. We've got fragmented teams who are fragmented not only in space because they're working remotely, but also in time because I'm starting work when someone else is going to bed and so on. We've got problems in our society with things like polarization. You only need to go on social media or look at the news. You spend 5 minutes on Twitter, you just see people arguing and shouting at each other rather than having constructive arguments. We have burnout. In the UK, the NHS are forecasting a huge amount of burnout amongst the population. And we also have issues with talent shortage. And I know we might be going into a time where there might be a little bit of a downturn, but those people that your business really needs, those talented people, are always going to be in demand. So I think that talent shortage isn't going anywhere. So I call this the Brave New World, where we've got all these challenges that are not going away. Global warming, whatever it is, I'm not going into whatever it is, but things like this aren't going away. They're here to stay. Okay, this Brave New World is here to stay. And it's a world where change is volatile, it's unpredictable, it's ambiguous. You don't really know what's happening and what's changing around you. This is the time that we live in now. So we've got one final question for you that Jessica's going to put to you.
Sure do. Is your team ready to survive and thrive in our brave new world? Notice the and thrive. Yes, no, or something else. All right. Getting lots of yeses.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. That's so awesome to hear.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. 100%. That's fantastic. Right. Okay. So that is really great that everyone's ready to thrive in the brave new world. If you want to go even further and maybe go, level up your team even further, then don't forget to grab hold of a copy of my book, which is available on Amazon now. And you can also reach me via my email address, andrew@interstellarway.life. Would love to hear from you. But otherwise, I think we're open for questions and answers.
Absolutely. We have about 10 more minutes. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and we will answer for you. I will also email out a recording of this session. So if you found it valuable and you want to share, I'll email it out. I will put it on YouTube. You'll get the slides, all of that. That'll happen either later today or tomorrow. So
Awesome.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, love to hear what you guys thought. Or is there any like the monsters you wanted to hear a bit more about, or questions about them? Do you know what, a question I'd love to know from people, if they're willing to answer in the chat, is why do you consider that your team is ready for this brave new world? I would love to know the answer. Because I'm just curious to about what you might say.
Quiet group.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. No worries. All right. Well, I had a good time doing the session today anyway, and chatting and sharing a bit about the monsters with everyone. It's actually
Wait. We do have questions.
Oh, do we? Oh, they're in the Q&A. Okay.
Let's put it up. So how do you recommend dealing with employees that have reached burnout? Is the first question.
Okay, that's a great question. I think the first place to start is with empathy, but and trying to understand. And when it seems like you already are in that position where you're coming from a place of empathy, I would try and give them some time off work. That's what I would want. If, in the past, I've been burnt out when I was employed and working too much. And I would try and first of all, give people some time off so they can reset and reconnect and be healthy, because there's no point in having a burnt out team member in your business. But then I would then look strategically at what it is that's caused them to become burnt out in the business in the first place. Is it because they have just overall too much to do? Or is it because they're having to task jump all the time? Because that can be really mentally taxing if you're continually jumping between things. So I would look at making some strategic changes as well. And you should also have a conversation with them when they're ready. If they're willing, you should have a friendly, open conversation with them, where they don't feel like they're at risk or at threat because of having that conversation with you. Try and do it in a friendly, kind environment and friendly space, and just ask them what you can do to support them and help them moving forwards.
And truly listen, because employees will tell you if you truly listen.
Yeah, there's a great book called The Lost Art of Listening, actually, which I recommend to all leaders, which will help you become a great listener.
Great recommendation. Okay, next question is, what can you do when the blame blob lives in a defensive state based on their job type?
Oh, okay. That's an interesting question. Yeah. So listen to I try not to focus on individuals with these monsters and try and assign them to individuals, because I think the problem with assigning questions to, labels to people, or saying, Jim from accounts is a blame blob because that's his job. I try and look at the overall culture of the business. And if the culture of the business permits someone to be that blamey or finger pointing, then really it's a bigger issue, which needs a bigger conversation about blame in the business. It needs a conversation with leaders and the people responsible for the culture. Because if you create the right kind of culture, then it won't permit that kind of those kind of toxic behaviors anyway. And I suppose at some point, if the business is not willing, if you're not the owner of the business or a senior executive and you don't have the power to change things, if they won't listen to changing things, then you have to consider if that's a culture you want to carry on participating in.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Jessica, my name twin, says that your website podcast looks amazing, and also mentioned that task jumping is an issue that they struggle with. That's an issue I struggle with as well. Do you have any recommendations for that?
I think you start blocking out your calendar. That's something that I did when first thing I did was looked at my calendar and got a bit defensive about my calendar and went, well, these are the 4 hours a day when I'm actually going to get deep work done. The work that requires deep thinking, like, for example, writing a book or doing a painting or doing some strategic work or whatever that thing is that requires your deep work. Block that time out in your calendar and really try and protect it. Don't book meetings in that time. Don't book small attention grabbing tasks in that time. Try and have Slack on mute or all these other things on mute, which are going to distract you. Tell your mum that she can't ring you till after 6 p.m, this kind of thing, and start blocking out your calendar. And when you do this, you'll find that it lightens your load immediately, because you're no longer halfway through your day already frazzled, and you feel better about yourself as well. Because also something that's not thought about with this is the attack on your self-image that's happened on your self-image. So if I want to get something done, like a big project done, I feel better about myself once I complete that big project and get it over the line. But if I'm continually struggling to get it over the line, I don't feel that great about myself. So my self-image is lessened. So yeah, do that. Start protecting your calendar and blocking those things out. And if you're not in control of your calendar completely, you need to have that honest conversation with your leadership and let them know that this is going to be better for both of you if this happens.
Right. The biggest thing that helped me, you only mentioned for a split second, but it was turning off notifications. not only blocking off that time, but turning off the notifications, because I found that anytime a notification came in, I would jump to do something, even though it might not be the most urgent, it might not be the most important, it would steal my attention and would kill my productivity. So I just wanted to reiterate that, turning off those notifications.
There's actually a monster in my book called the shallow buzzer, which is a big part of that.
Absolutely.
That problem. So yeah, check that out.
Absolutely. So Jessica mentioned that the chat wasn't working. I am so sorry, guys. I don't know what happened there, but I'm glad we got to answer your questions. Are there any other questions?
Oh, thanks, Jessica, for the compliments about my podcast website. That you can also connect on LinkedIn with me if you want as well. I'd love that. So, reach out to me there.
Same. I'm also on LinkedIn. Since we're mentioning productivity killers, I guess now would be a good time to talk about Smith.ai. If you're tired of answering those spam calls and your phone ringing all day long while you're trying to focus, call us. We'll take care of those calls for you.
That sounds like a solid solution to me.
Okay, so we have another question from Jessica. She wants to know if your podcast is on the iPhone app or if it's only on the website.
You can find it on iTunes. No, it's not called iTunes now, is it? It's called Apple Podcasts. Yeah, it's on Apple Podcasts. Interstellar Business Show. It's on there. It's
called Interstellar Business Show.
Yeah. And I actually have a new show launching next week with a great guy called and I'll say this very clearly, For Work's Sake, and that's coming out next week, and that's multi-platform. So keep an eye out for that one. That's going to be a hot one.
Great. Looking forward to that. If you can shoot me over a link to the podcast, I can put it in the email that I send out after as well.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? You guys have been great today. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Andrew Bull, for coming and teaching us all about monsters.
Oh, okay. Okay, Jessica. Yeah, we'll put all the links when we send everything out for you. Yeah, 100%. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Jessica. I really appreciate being here with you today. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a great day. See you again soon.